14 guests, over 30,000 views, a basket full of emails, and some great memories. We're wrapping up our first season of Suncoast People and preparing for our next. And I thought it would be a good time to look back at some moments from this past season. My very first guest is no stranger to the Suncoast. Linda Carson has been on TV here for over a quarter of a century and in the TV business for over 60 years. In this clip, Linda shares with me how she met her late husband, Bud Carson. Where did you and Bud meet?
Bud was head coach at Georgia Tech, and I was anchoring the news and reporting at Channel 11 in Atlanta. And it was a Friday, a Jewish holiday, and the sports director didn't come to work that day, so they said, "Oh, Carson's really mean. Oh, he's tough. Who's going to go interview him?" And I said, "Me." When I got there, I said, we did the interview, and I said, I knew nothing about sports. And afterwards I said, I heard you were divorced. So am I. And I have this book that helped me so much through my divorce. Maybe it'll help you. And I would like to have it back. It's got my phone number, so if you'll just call me when you're through with it.
Oh, smooth.
That's how I met my husband.
I talk all the time about how Suncoast People is about people and not things. We steer away from promoting places or products, and we try to avoid politics, though some of my guests have deeply held beliefs. And personally, I don't necessarily consider that politics. Former Vice Mayor Ken Shelin has been a champion for justice and equality for his entire career.
Well, let me say just first of all that I have a strong sense of fairness, and I really, when I see unfairness, I have a very difficult time. I have to speak out.
What do you say to people who go, well, life isn't fair?
It's what you make it. And my life has been a serendipitous life. And I think it's been that way because I'm always looking for ways to improve my life and enjoy my life and contribute to the community around me. And you can make it fair. You can eliminate unfairness. You can work to stop nonsense. But if you give up and back off and say, well, life's not fair, then it will be. Simple as that.
Do you ever just get into a silly mood? Maybe you have a friend who brings that out in you. And that's what happened when Jeffery Kin paid a visit. I'd only met him a couple times before when I was at ABC 7. And this was the first time we really had a sit-down conversation. I thought I'd take a chance, diverting from the script, and have some fun with his introduction. You'd never know my guest today is an Ohio farm boy, except by his work ethic and generosity and his fondness for sheep.
Yeah.
Shall I continue?
You continue, yes. The best intro ever.
And like a lot of people, he came to Sarasota because of work. No place else would hire him. Oh, wow. And he stayed and stayed. He's an actor and a playwright, but he may be best known for his role of artistic director at the Players Center for Performing Arts. Jeffery Kin, welcome to Suncoast People.
Thank you. Wow, that was some intro. I'm flattered? I think.
I like to ask my guests questions about themselves. What do they do to relax? Or what skill do they wish that they had? In this case, I asked the multi-talented Nikki Logan Curran, publisher of the Scout Guide Sarasota, what skill she wishes she had. What don't you know how to do that maybe you'd like to learn?
I'd really like to be, this sounds so silly. David wakes up every morning and does a crossword puzzle. And I don't know if you ever saw like the 20-year study. They've done 2 of them now. It was either Harvard or Stanford. And that was like the #1 thing for brain, like maintaining good cognitive function. But I never take the time to slow down and do any of those like building your brain activities, crossword puzzles, word searches, Sudoku, any of that kind of stuff. I need
I don't either.
I don't do any of that stuff, and I know how important it is. And we have a history of Alzheimer's in our family and dementia, and I'm like, I don't take any time. Everything I'm doing is exactly the opposite of what I need to be doing to like stop and do a puzzle or meditate. So I would definitely say I don't know how to slow down, or maybe that's a little, I don't know, maybe a little lazy on my part. I don't take the time to do it.
Suncoast People is about people climbing their second mountain. I got the idea from a great book by author and New York Times columnist David Brooks. You see, all of us have a second mountain, some of us a third mountain to climb. It's that point of transition in your life, and with that comes change. Now, there's no better example of change than Barry Ayers. You see, Barry is a trans woman, and she's a drag queen performing under the name of Beneva Fruitville. She struggled all her life with her gender identity, and in this clip, she shares in a rare moment of candor how she faced her transition and how she felt with Barry transitioning and what to do with her Beneva character.
Before I transitioned, as you know, as a personal friend of mine, that I'm a transgender woman, and I transitioned over 2 years ago, medically transitioned over 2 years ago, and began my transition 3 years ago. So before I transitioned, it was probably easier to tell the difference between Barry and Beneva. But as I transitioned, the lines became a little bit blurred, and because I was living my life every day as my true self, as my most authentic self, how I felt on the inside, and what I thought and felt and things I said used to be a way, like used to come out through Beneva's mouth, like things that I couldn't say as Barry, as an educator, as a person in the professional life. Beneva could say those things and get away with it, whereas Barry had to be professional, had to be someone in the corporate world, someone to represent an organization. So as the lines have blurred a bit, and also I had a career change. I went from being in the professional world to performing full time. I took the opportunity to kind of integrate the two. And so now I'm a little bit more personally verbose in my opinions and my stances on issues, whereas I used to be a little bit more private about those things.
I believe that we're the product of our family and our environment. And Renée James Gilmore is someone whom I have deep respect. Her father hosted the longest running public affairs program in the Southeast, right here in Sarasota, Black Almanac. Today, she carries on his legacy with empowering voices. And for her, it's more than a talk show. It embodies our community and giving voice to those who might not otherwise be heard.
Black Almanac wasn't just a show for my father. It really is a way of life. It's a community-based program. It's about understanding what's happening in our neighborhoods for sure, right here locally on the Suncoast, and how we connect with the rest of the world, how we interact with the rest of the world. So all those things that people often see on, national television, how does that impact what's happening right here at home?
Yeah.
And how does what we do here at home impact the national scene? If you knew anything about my father, you know that he was a advocate, and he very much understood the importance of politics, the role that policies, public policies, and relationships play in our daily lives. So I would say he was a political beast, if you will. He just consumed everything political. And I would say that myself, my two brothers, we are very much like that also. We consume a lot of politics. So being in the community and understanding all the connectivity that we have to each other into the rest of the world. That's a full-time thing. It's life. It's life.
On a personal note, I moved to Sarasota in January 2020. This was my second mountain. Previously, I worked in television news at the local and network levels, a career I'm very proud of. And I've owned a couple companies along the way, one of which I still keep going. I moved here to retire, like so many other folks. Sound familiar? But instead, I immersed myself into volunteering and networking, and not an easy task during a pandemic. But through that, I've met some amazing people I am honored to call friends, and I'm grateful for that. For a short while, I was at Suncoast View on ABC7. I was the guy in between Joey Panek's departure and his return. And today, I'm doing Suncoast People. It really is a passion project for me. Now, speaking of Joey, I asked him about his career as an actor and how he got the acting bug. But you started out as an actor.
Yes. Yeah. I grew up in Syracuse, like you said, and doing community theater since I was a little kid. It was my passion. It was like all my brothers played sports and were interested in other things, but like theater was my thing. And I've always loved it and always did it. And and went right into it after school.
What was your first big role?
Okay, this is crazy. I was obsessed with the musical Peter Pan. I wasn't a weird kid at all. Yeah, obsessed.
Tinkerbell. You were Tinkerbell?
Oh, well, I was a little too large to be Tinkerbell because I was a hefty kid. So I was obsessed with the show, and then a local community theater was doing it. And I was like, this is perfect. And I went and I got cast as Michael, the youngest of the three.
Yeah.
But I was a bigger kid. So
what, you were like 22, 23?
No, like I was a heavier kid.
Okay.
I enjoyed indulging in a lot of food as a kid, so I was about as wide as I was tall. And
I know the feeling. And some guests have amazing, and I have to say, hard to believe stories. But this story, I believe. Alan Brasington, a former Broadway actor, designer, writer, mentor, teacher, shares some of his earliest moments. Take a listen. You remember being born?
Yes, I do. I remember before being born as well. And there was what was amazing for me, and perhaps it was because my parents were so young. My mother was 16 when I was born. My father was 17.
Oh my gosh.
And but I remember being aware of sounds coming from outside wherever I was. I didn't know where I was. And I would hear these, and sometimes there would be laughter, and I thought, if only I knew what that was, what those sounds were, I'd know what I was doing here, because it was very uncomfortable in there besides.
I could imagine. I could imagine. Plus, you couldn't see anything.
No.
But you weren't aware of what vision was at that point anyway.
No, it was just dark. I do remember sometimes I would breathe in, and then I would choke because all this liquid would go down. I'd be choking and kind of moving around.
And then there are times when words escape you. That moment when someone opens up to you on a deeply personal level, and all you can do is listen and show support. Chef Christopher Covelli sat down to talk about his life, how he chose the path of being a chef versus a music career. And he shared what could be described as the greatest loss of his life. Your late husband, Greg, died unexpectedly in 2020 of COVID.
We both had it.
You both had COVID at the same time, and you survived. And like so many people, I mean, they're talking now, a million plus people have lost their lives to COVID. And I know you've said that he was the love of your life.
Oh, yeah.
And you were just such a great team. How have you moved forward? How did you do that?
Sharon, Kat, everybody at Sage. Wasn't easy at first because he died in my arms. Never apologized for happiness.
Of course.
He brought everything positive that I have inside out. He's here with me every day.
Of course.
Moving on's not easy. But he's here. He's part of me, so I get to experience that happiness, even though he's not physically here. Moving on's not easy. I've had to be in therapy, of course, and go through a lot of stuff. And then you have the people around you, like yourself, and everybody around. So the day I started to feel like I was going to move forward was November 7th, 2021. I leased out Selby Gardens inside and out, and we did a celebration of life. And there were tons of people there.
Oh, lovely.
And when we got married, I sang our first dance to him, which was Time of Our Life by David Cook. He loved that song, and we watched David Cook win American Idol that year. So it was a really amazing transformation for us. And then he said, same thing, if anything ever happens, I'd like you to sing. A lot of people didn't know that I do. I used to sing professionally. And so I did a song called Angels by Robbie Williams, which is a very profound, heartfelt song.
Oh, it's a beautiful song.
And I think not only did I shock the people that never got to see me sing before, something came out that night. Just being there with our kids, our grandkids, all our friends. And there was somewhat of a transformation because like the song says, I'm loving angels instead. Yeah. That was kind of where I kind of crossed my own water, and I realized if he saw me like this, he'd be so aggravated, and he'd be like, Christopher, this is not you. Yeah. And he would give me that amazing, adorable twinkle eyes smile, and he'd come and hug me, and that was his way of handling me.
I'm glad to report that Chef Chris is doing well, and he's met someone who's very special now in his life. This new connection is yet another mountain for him. Speaking of connections, have you ever met someone with whom you just click? Someone who can make you laugh and you get a good feeling from them? I'm fortunate to have a number of people in my life like that, and one in particular got me laughing so hard, I thought I'd have to just stop the show, take a break, and recover. But we carried on. Now this needs a little bit of a setup. When Annie Morrison was a young woman, she met a young gentleman who was from Korea, and he sang and performed with his family's band. And Annie was invited to perform with the band and help them with their English.
Would you be willing to join the band, because your English is so good and we love your talent? So I left the school and joined the family for like I went up to Canada first. Well, I actually went to visit them up in Canada, and they decided that I should do this. For 2 years, I was on the road singing with a Korean family.
But you also did more than sing with them.
Oh, I was the MC.
Well, you also played the trombone.
Well, that's interesting because, well, here's the thing.
Did my homework.
Their English was terrible, and being there helped them a lot. And I had to learn Korean to at least the alphabet, so I could phonetically write out for Mrs. Kim, so she could pronounce, because she would get out there and sing, "Take the living from my hay, run it roo, run it far, if me tray tonight." So I had to kind of help them. The kids were singing, because they would do, rock stuff too, and they go, "Can't get it up. I'm a honky, stop. Can't get it up." I said, "Guys, I can't get enough of that funky stuff." So I really had to help, Eddie's the eldest son's daughter, or his wife, his wife, Love musical theater, and she'd go, "Hello, Derry, well, hello, Derry," you know. So I really needed to be there, and I convinced them that they should sing a Korean folk song, jazz it up to start off the show, you know. So, and I'm probably, after all these years, I'm singing it incorrectly, but we go, "Hey, kung kang sangi manicha momaraki hamiyo, halasan do pa, soksei do na kuna," and it was just crazy. But I had so much fun with them.
Oh my God.
Yeah, but I learned a really cool lesson. Once they decided we were doing this Andrews Sisters number, and they thought, wouldn't it be fun if you guys could just pick up an instrument and play? So they thought, you know, we'll give you a valve trombone because you're going to be dancing along while doing this, you know.
Oh, and that's easy with a valve
Yeah,
trombone.
you know, just, you know, blow,
Or
these are
just
the
pick up a
pitches.
bass fiddle and dance
right,
with
you
it.
know. We're going to teach you these valves and what pitches to blow. You practice in the afternoon, you go in the evening. So the lesson that I learned is, as long as you don't know you can't do something, you can do anything. I didn't know I couldn't play. I didn't know, you know.
I'm doing this.
Right, hello. So I picked up the trombone. Oh, that's what you do. You do it. You went out. I had to join the music union. But I only knew the songs that they taught me the pitches to blow. You know, I had to play Satin Doll on a trombone, the harmony part, and I had to join the union.
Well, we've run out of time, and I'm sorry I couldn't include clips from all my guests. I thank each and every one of them for sharing their stories, and I'm indebted to them for believing in what we're doing here on Suncoast People. They were willing to come on a show that they'd never heard of, as it was just launching. I'd love to hear from you, especially if you know someone who has a remarkable story to share. You can send an email to info@suncoastpeople.com. Now keep in mind all episodes are archived on YouTube at Suncoast People and also suncoastpeople.com. I'm Robert Tim, and thanks for watching.